please call the roll.
Commissioner Kaiser? Present. Commissioner Anderson?
Likewise.
Commissioner Nanke?
Here.
Chair McCoid?
Here.
Commissioner Osick? Absent. Commissioner Hoy?
Here.
Commissioner Cook?
Here.
Vice Chair Lewis?
Here.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, there are no additions and deletions to the agenda. We have any public comment? Have none. Does anybody here wish to speak before the Housing Authority? Last chance. Okay, moving along. Co-Chair Lewis, you've got a motion for me on the consent calendar.
Yes, I move acceptance of the consent calendar.
Second.
Moved by Co-Chair Lewis, seconded by Commissioner Hoy to approve the consent calendar. Any discussion?
Yes.
Commissioner
I'm going
Anderson.
to abstain from item 3.1A because I was absent from that meeting.
Thank you. Any other comments? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Special orders of business, we have none. No public hearing. Under information reports, we have a program management report. Mr. Wilsh, anything you want to add to any of this?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The only comments I have this afternoon or this evening are just provide a little bit of context for the action we took on South Fair. So what we find is that young couples come in and all of a sudden they have children. Go figure. And so they didn't have a preference to move into a larger unit. So that's one change we made. And the other change is we feel that we need to do as much as we can on the homeless side of this. So we've given a preference to the homeless client at South Fair as well.
Okay, thank you. Comments? Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you. Mr. Welch, I'd just like to compliment you on 6A, which is your program management report. You seem to do this every time. You tell a little story, and this one I thought was particularly well written and poignant, and it puts a human face on the statistics that you deal with all the time. And so I really appreciate getting that information in front of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anything else for the good of the order? Hearing none, this meeting of the Housing Authority of the City of Salem is adjourned.
Call this meeting of the City Council for November 27th to order. And ask you to call the roll.
Councilor Kaiser?
Present.
Councilor Anderson?
Likewise.
Councilor Nanke?
Here.
Councilor McCoid?
Here.
Councilor Osick?
Here.
Councilor Hoy?
Here.
Councilor Cook?
Here.
Councilor Lewis?
Here.
And Mayor Bennett?
Here. Okay, Councilor McCoid.
We have no additions.
No additions or deletions, okay? Any comments from the council?
Happy Thanksgiving.
We all had a nice Thanksgiving, yes. Yes, Councilor Kaiser.
Thank you. I think, what was it, a week ago we had the pleasure of opening the ice rink
We did.
as a council.
What do you mean by fun?
It was a quite entertaining night. And yes, the mayor was featured prominently the next day. But just want to say that the ice rink's been really fun. I've heard lots of comments. I walked down there a couple times. It's very popular, and I've actually heard a few people ask if we can just have it all year round. They like it so much. So I think it was a really great move, and people are really enjoying it. So.
Great, great. Anyone else? I'm going to just do mine. Yes, I had a chance to go to that same skating party. That was a real joy. I get Staples out tomorrow, and then I had a chance to ride the train in with Santa this past weekend to the carousel, and really felt good that I did not fall off onto the tracks and get run over by that thing. I feel particularly good today. So, Mr. Manager.
Well, the holiday fun continues.
Oh, does it? It's like the Three Stooges around here, isn't it?
This Friday, December 1st, please bundle up the family and join your friends and neighbors as we celebrate the 22nd annual holiday tree lighting ceremony at Riverfront Park. Festivities begin at 6 p.m. and Mayor Bennett will lead the tree lighting ceremony at 6:30.
They don't give me matches. So.
There will be free hot cocoa and cookies provided by Roth's, family craft booth hosted by the Straub Environmental Center, musical performances from the Grizzly Youth Choir, and a visit from Santa with transportation provided by the Salem Fire Department, and also live reindeer. 6 o'clock down at Riverfront Park this Friday.
Saturday at 6 o'clock, Willamette University will be, for the first time in several years, relighting the star sequoia trees. They have got the lights up to help celebrate their 175th anniversary and Christmas. And I'll talk a little more about that under proclamations. Anyone else? Councilor Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this Thursday, I had the pleasure of taking part in the Runacopia, and I'm very grateful to have had that opportunity. And I was very pleased to see city staff there, too, and lots of people that work for the city. So I was just pleased that when we talk about things like park and the ice skating rink, to see people that are taking part in making the decisions and making things happen, also enjoying things like the bridge and the park connectivity. It was a great day and very grateful to be in Salem.
Very good. Anyone else? Okay, excellent. Well, I do have some proclamations. I'll go ahead here. I'm going to invite up Jim Bauer, Vice President for Campus Planning and External Affairs, who'll receive the proclamation on behalf for the university. We're celebrating Willamette's 175th anniversary. But who's counting, huh? Whereas Willamette University was founded in 1842 as the first university in the West, whereas Salem and Oregon's economy, civic life, and overall quality of life are strengthened through higher education, and whereas Willamette University attracts talented people to the city and state, whereupon many remain and become civic and business leaders. Ta-da! Yes. Yeah. And whereas, through its nationally recognized liberal arts and professional graduate schools, as well as its distinguished faculty, students, and alumni, Willamette University brings renown to the city of Salem and state of Oregon. And whereas for 175 years, Willamette University has prepared generations of Oregonians for lives of achievement, contribution, and meaning, and whereas the university's 175th anniversary is a significant time to reflect upon the past, present, and future contributions of the university and its community to the enrichment of lives in Salem and around the world, and whereas the famed star trees, 5 giant sequoias planted on Willamette University's campus to commemorate the university's 100th anniversary in 1942 are a symbol of Willamette in the city of Salem. And now, therefore, I, Chuck Bennett, Mayor of the City of Salem, do hereby proclaim December 2nd, 2017, Willamette University's 175th anniversary, and encourage the community on this date to honor the university and its contributions to this community and beyond at the annual holiday lighting of the campus famed star trees, dated this 27th day of November 2017. And here's a copy of the proclamation. Thank you, Jim.
Just a quick thank you to all of you. Is this working? Great. To the community. Salem would be a different place without Willamette, and Willamette would not be a complete place without Salem. And being a part of this community has shaped the lives of thousands and thousands of people as they came here, learned about what a great community we are, and have gone on to other parts of the world, taking a piece of what we have here with them. So thank you for recognizing us. Please encourage anybody who would like to come to the event on Saturday night. You'll be having cookies and hot chocolate, a lot like on Friday night. But we also have some wonderful music. All of our choral groups will be involved. We want to make this a real celebration. 175 years is something that we're very proud of and very excited to celebrate. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Whereas Giving Tuesday was established as a national day of giving on the Tuesday following Thanksgiving, and whereas Giving Tuesday is a celebration of philanthropy and volunteerism, where people give whatever they're able to give, and whereas Giving Tuesday is a day where people work together to share commitments, rally for favorite causes, build a stronger community, and think about others, and whereas it is fitting and proper on Giving Tuesday and on every day to recognize the tremendous impact of philanthropy, volunteerism, community service in the city of Salem, Oregon, and whereas Giving Tuesday is an opportunity to encourage people to serve others through this holiday season, as well as other times of the year, now, therefore, I, Chuck Bennett, Mayor of the City of Salem, do hereby proclaim November 28th, 2017 as Giving Tuesday and encourage the community to join together and give back in any way that is personally meaningful, dated this 27th day of November, 2017. And I'm really pleased to present the proclamation to Ron Hayes, the Chief Executive Officer of United Way, and United Way employee Liz Schrader. Come on down, Liz. You don't get to just take selfies up there. Would you like to say something?
We accept this in honor of all the nonprofits in our community. It's just not United Way. It's the multiple nonprofits that serve. And I would be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity to let you know that this next week is closing for a letter of interest to the Willamette Atkinson School of Graduate School of Management, who has a grantsmanship class there, that they're taking letters of inquiry and interest in $150,000 of grant monies to be given out to our local nonprofits here based on their RFP that they're submitting. It's online now at on the Atkinson site, but if you have questions about it, please let me know. We gave out $150,000 last year to various nonprofits in this area and the surrounding area, and we look forward to hopefully getting the word out to others that may be of interest in that.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay. And then I want to just introduce our guests this evening. You're all guests, but I have some special guests from the Livingston Adventist Academy. You guys want to stand up, say hi? Thank you for coming down to your city council. If you have any questions, just tap this guy right here on the shoulder. He'll answer them. Okay. Okay. And then we have a special presentation this evening. It's a Achievement Award in GIS being presented by Daniel Henderson. There he is.
So I've got to actually have a physical award to hand to you. Sweet. So on behalf of Esri, which is the company I work for, and Jack Dangerman, who's our founder and owner and president, we'd like to present the Special Achievement in Geographic Information Systems Award to the City of Salem. So those of you who may never have heard of GIS or Esri, we are the largest mapping and analytical firm in the world. Recent article in Forbes, we're worth about $4 billion, I think. So one of the biggest companies you probably never heard of, right? So part of the reason we're presenting this to Salem, and it's a great honor, less than 0.1% of our customers annually receive this award. And you're one of 13 cities in the United States to receive it in 2017. So this is not the first time that Salem has won this award, and I highly doubt the last time as well. Why did the city receive this award? So through the leadership of your CIO, Christian Amburi, Sue Blom, and Dan Brown, and the rest of the GIS team, you've continually integrated GIS and location technology within mission-critical systems within the city. What's a mission-critical system? Your public works department, your permitting systems, your 911 systems, all those things that your citizens here expect to work when we call up the phone or call your city council and ask for those things to be working. Some examples of that, your street light data collection project. Recently with the eclipse, you guys did a lot of work with Waze and their Connected Citizens program and our partnership with them, and that allowed you to give information around street closures, about where to view the eclipse in your different parks and viewing locations throughout the city, and it helped reduce traffic congestion throughout the city. And then also through emergency preparedness. So last summer, preparing for the Cascadia Rising earthquake simulation and being prepared for other emergencies that may occur, like flood events or an earthquake event. Salem's becoming a smart and data-driven city, and they're a leader locally, regionally, and nationally with our technology. So many customers in the area and beyond strive to be more like Salem. It's very often I hear people say, we want to emulate what Salem has done. So your reputation as a leader is very well earned. I want to thank you for the honor of working with such an awesome team who are here tonight. I'd like to have them stand. And we're looking forward to many more years of great work with you guys as a partner. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. It's a real honor for the city to receive this, and certainly Krishna and her team are the best. We just really appreciate them very much. So thank you. Thank you.
Get it away.
There we go. That's a plan.
Don't hit the gavel.
Okay, this is an opportunity for folks who want to comment on issues besides public hearings that are on the agenda to speak to the City Council. And I'll remind you that you have 3 minutes. At 2 minutes, the yellow light will come on. At 3 minutes, I'd ask you to please stop talking and let the council ask you questions if they have any. So we'll start with Sean O'Day, no stranger to this process.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. I'm Sean O'Day. I'm the Executive Director of the Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. I'm here to urge your yes vote on the Homeless Program Coordinator Intergovernmental Agreement and adjoining resolution that is in your packet tonight. I am joined today with Mayor Kathy Clark from the City of Kaiser and Commissioner Janet Carlson from Marion County. The way we're going to kind of divide things up tonight is I'm going to tell you a little bit about the COG, what we are and why it is that we're a party to this agreement. And then Mayor Clark and Commissioner Carlson will follow with more information specifically about the Mid-Willamette Valley Homeless Initiative, which is the focus of this particular position. So the Council of Governments was formed in 1957. We were one of the first Council of Governments actually formed in the United States, originally as a regional planning authority for the cities of then Salem, coordinating with Marion and Polk County. Soon thereafter, Kaiser, well, a little bit later than that, Kaiser would incorporate. They would join in on the effort. And all of this happened long before Oregon had a land use system as we know it today. The reason why I note that is that although planning remains at the core of what we do for the region, what grew from that is an organization that exists collectively for the benefit of the region's governments. Today, we are comprised of all 3 counties, Marion, Polk, Yamhill County, all 33 cities that are within those counties, every school district represented through the Willamette ESD, the Salem-Kaiser School District. We have a Park and Recs district, and we are also very proud to say that we're one of the few regional governments in the United States that has a tribal government underneath it and within it. What we do as a Council of Governments is we serve as a conduit for regional collaboration. We receive federal funding today that helps fund regional transportation programs, including partially funding some of the operations for our regional bus service. We provide federal funding for business loans and we also provide, we are a conduit for federal funding in the areas of economic development. We've facilitated many intergovernmental cooperative initiatives, including we were the birthplace of CCTV. We also helped create a regional park and rec district, and we're one of the sponsors and supporters of the interlibrary loan program that we have within the region today. It was because of this background that the COG was approached last spring to help facilitate and house a position within our structure to help with a then newly adopted strategic plan surrounding homelessness here within the region. And again, I'm going to be followed by Mayor Clark, who's going to talk a little bit more about that initiative, how it came to be, and what this position would do within it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Sean. Any questions? Okay. Thank you. And Mayor Clark, what an honor.
A little shorter. Mayor Bennett, members of the council, and staff. My name is Kathy Clark. I'm the mayor of Kaiser. I'm also the vice chair of the Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments Board of Directors, and I was one of the 4 co-chairs of the Mid-Willamette Homeless Initiative Task Force. This group came together because of a recognized need to work collaboratively to effectively serve people who are experiencing homelessness or who are housing insecure. We've recognized that because we are trying to serve people, that it is necessarily complex and that it is necessarily individual in finding reasonable and effective solutions to help people move from being homeless or housing insecure into permanent supportive housing. So the task force was formed with the task of looking at homelessness from a variety of points of view, different populations, best practices, and opportunities for collaboration. Clearly, we have organizations within our communities who are doing fabulous work. And Mayor, you honored a group tonight, the United Way, which is one of many organizations within our communities of Marion, Polk, and Yamhill, who are serving people who are in need. However, no one group has all the answers. Neither does one jurisdiction. Marion County does a great job with housing. The City of Salem, you have a group that is working on initiatives within your community to address the needs of people who are homeless. We are looking at housing. We are looking at students who are insecure or couch surfing. We are looking at veterans. How do we specifically serve them? And if you want to watch a fabulous video, watch the meeting where we had the homeless, we had the task force listen to folks talk about the needs of homeless veterans. That was riveting because the veterans can best serve veterans, establish trust, establish understanding about where they are, where they're coming from, and how they can get to a place of security. The Council of Governments is particularly well suited to house this particular position because this is a 3-county Council of Governments. We have the ability to be neutral. We are Switzerland. It is not one that is going to receive funds for a particular program, but can receive federal and state funds and be the fiscal agent without having any sort of conflicts. In addition, we are able to bring in best practices, help take what you're doing, what other organizations are doing, and get that word out. And more importantly, to move the work forward in a collaborative manner that helps serve more people, bring more dollars into our area that way we might have missed if we're trying to work individually. I feel it is very important that Marion, Polk, and Yamhill come together and find ways to be effective in bringing our resources and our very big hearts. Giving Tuesday is 365 days a year of making sure that people are being well served. And now I'll turn it over to Commissioner Carlson.
Thank you, Mayor. Any questions for Mayor Clark? Commissioner, good evening.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. I'm Janet Carlson, Marion County Commissioner, and I'll just try to fill in some gaps. First of all, in your packet, you have the strategic plan that came out of the Mid-Willamette Homeless Initiative, and that was a year's worth of work. Mayor Bennett served on the last two, as co-chair of the last 2 meetings, and appreciate Councilor Anderson also attending many of the meetings himself. We had, in addition to the full council, 8 subcommittees that formed in the spring and worked across the summer and into the fall. Hundreds of people involved, lots and lots of activity, trying to come up with what some of the solutions were, not just around affordable housing, which is critical, and transitional housing and shelters, but also around social service collaboration and public safety and a number of other veterans, as we talked about some other topics that are involved with homelessness. It was the direction of the task force in the last meeting for us to move forward with a project manager, for want of a better term, that would help us, not with those initiatives that Salem is working on, because I know you've got a plan and you're working full bore on what you want to do. Marion County, we have a number of things we've been working on: reentry housing, law enforcement assisted diversion. We're standing up a veteran services officer. We have the staff capacity to do that. But there are initiatives in that plan that nobody's working on. And as Kathy said, we have a lot of great work going on, lots of nonprofits and other jurisdictions across the communities working on things. But a lot of these things, when you do the daily work, you don't have time to do the things that need to happen together. And so this would be a position that would help us do those things. One example that I use constantly, and it's probably not the best example, but there's a proposal for financial literacy. We heard from NEDCO. They do financial literacy classes. They said nobody shows up. We heard from MAPS. They said that they had a curriculum that they're using that they could help with. We had nonprofits that said we have people that need financial literacy training, but they don't know where to go to classes. So, you know, it doesn't take too much of a air traffic controller to be able to put that type of thing together, but nobody is assigned to do that, and we need someone that can actually be that air traffic controller and kind of bring these silos together and help us work collaboratively. I provided 2 documents in advance this morning. I hope you got them electronically. I don't know. One of them is the PowerPoint that I gave back on February 13th, for those of you that weren't here or don't recall that. And then the other is a money map that an intern in our office has been working on, and roughly $87.5 million is currently going from jurisdictions into preventing or working with homelessness from our jurisdictions. If you talk about the housing authorities, the money that you're putting in, the money Marion County's putting in, a lot of that is mental health and addictions dollars. But I ask you to take a look at it at your leisure, because a lot of money's going in, but is it being targeted? Are we cooperating and coordinating in the way that we need to? And we think this is really a step in the right direction to help us do that. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner.
Oh, and one more thing. Marion County is putting $45,000 into this position as well, so we are matching your contribution.
Very good. Any questions? Okay. Tricia Ratliff.
Good evening. My name is Tricia Ratliff, and I'm from Community Action Home Youth and Resource Center. And I'm here to share a little bit with you guys about youth homelessness and what that looks like in Marion County. I apologize, I did not get these out to the group beforehand.
That's okay. Well, you'll take them from.
Perfect. Thank you. So real briefly, we pulled together some data that shows exactly what's going on in our community. A lot of the data that's on this form that's going out is with the school district. Fantastic data, very reliable, and staggering numbers. One thing as you guys are browsing through it, when you have the chance, is to note that those numbers, you could almost double them, because the numbers on there are only the youth that are connected in school. It doesn't count the youth that are disconnected, and we know that that number is greatly bigger. So yes, the numbers are big and it shows the need, but I ask that in your mind you kind of double that, because that's truly what it is. So our business here tonight is in support of Mr. Steve McCoid's request for up to $12,500 to help us in our efforts with the National 100-Day Youth Challenge. So, back up on that is HUD has supported 13 communities across the nation. We are the 14th group to go through this. They give us 100 days to really focus on youth homelessness and considerable strides to ending youth homelessness. Obviously, 100 days is not going to do it. So the process is that we put together a team of system leaders. We did that in October. We had many people from different sectors come together and say, what can we do in 100 days? What's going to be our focus? That team of system leaders decided that focusing on unaccompanied, non-system involved youth is really where we can put our efforts on 100 days, knowing that there's other systems working on those that are in foster care, those are connected to the juvenile system. But at home, we see this group of kids that aren't in a system and they have nothing. So that's what we're going to be focusing the 100-day challenge on. This week, we have the opportunity with our on-the-floor staff, our frontline staff, to define that project and our exact goals, and then we'll go forward from that. But we know that we'll be looking at that missed population of minors, and then also working with Marion County and informing their work on opening an overnight shelter and coordinating and improving the youth services in general in Marion County.
Great. Thank you very much. Yes, Councilor Hoy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for that information. I really appreciate it.
Sorry, quick and easy.
No problem. This is really helpful. I'm curious, though, what specifically will we be, well, if we were to approve the money, what specifically would that money go toward?
Great question. So the third paper there in your guys' packet is an estimated budget for what we know for our travel needs. The team is made up of 12 different agencies that are coming together, and there's various workshops and facilitated activities that we need to do as a team and with our cohorts across the country. So we're one of 5 communities that is going through this process at the same time. Everyone else is focusing on the TAY population, the young adults, 18 to 24. We are the only ones in the country out of these cohorts that is focusing on minors. So it's very important that we're able to go to these functions to inform our process, but then also the national initiative of looking at minors. We know that they're looking for us to kind of pilot this project. So that budget is for our travel costs. The remaining of the ask would fund the work of the group. That will be further defined after we go through our first workshop this week.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Yes. Do you want to? I want to actually kick it off to Joe Zimmer. This project is bigger than Marion County and includes the rural Oregon continuum of care. And so Joe can share a little bit more about how it serves the bigger picture in Oregon.
Okay, Joe Zimmer. Got it.
Mayor Bennett, councilors, thank you for your time here. I'm supporting Tricia as coordinator of the Rural Oregon Continuum of Care, which is Oregon's 28 most rural counties that form the balance of state continuum of care. And this project, this 100-day challenge to end youth homelessness, actually began last year when the COC, when the Continuum of Care applied for the Youth Homeless Demonstration Program grant through HUD, and we were not selected. We didn't have the community I guess, the community structure at the time to do that, but in subsequent opportunities, this challenge came up, and it was a way for the COC and Marion County to actually capitalize on the work that y'all are already doing in the community around youth homelessness, not taking away from what you're already doing, but building on a body of work with a lot of technical assistance providers and a lot of experience of, like Tricia said, I think 14 other communities ahead of us doing this work. The cohort that we're working in right now is rural. We're all rural, and so this is going to be building a body of work on rural youth homelessness. And as far as the continuum of care is concerned, this project does set the stage then for potentially funding in the next round of Youth Homeless Demonstration Program grant, which is funded and which is project-based funding to provide housing for youth, and it would run potentially concurrent to like continuum of care competitions on an annual basis. So it is kind of a bigger thing, and we've been really excited working with the system leaders in the very beginning, developing the initial goal, which was around the minor youth and supporting the educational process regarding the youth shelter work. And then our launch tomorrow and Wednesday and Thursday will bring the actual team members nominated by the system leaders into the process, where this really is a big community effort to do X, Y, Z, and the team this week will determine what the goals are based on what the initial overall challenge was decided. So happy to provide information along the way when we can. If you're interested, and just let us know.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for Joe before she moves on? Okay, thank you very much. That's all I have signed up for public comment. Okay, we'll move forward to the consent calendar.
Mr. Mayor, I move approval of consent calendar with the following poll. 3.2A by Councilor Lewis.
Second.
Go ahead.
Who seconded?
Councilor Hoy seconded. And I will go through the consent calendar for those viewing. We've got the minutes of the November 17th City Council work session and the November 13th City Council work session and the November 13th City Council meeting. Under action items, we've got a reappointment of Noel Greffinson as a municipal judge pro tem. He has been a municipal judge pro tem since 1996 and is eligible for another 2-year term. We have a purchase and sale agreement with to purchase property at 1890 Eola Drive Northwest from Suzanne Killigrew. This has been something that's been going on for quite some time, and it's a piece of property right along Eola Drive that the city is purchasing. Selling. No, Suzanne's
Purchase and
selling it,
sale.
we're buying it.
No, we're selling it to her, and she can't put an access out.
Okay, sorry. We have an amendment to the intergovernmental agreement with the Salem Kaiser School District for resource officer services. This is an extension of an agreement that was going to end July 31st of 2017, now goes through the end of the year. The school district reimburses the police department for the expenses involved, if the offer's involved. And we also have a lease amendment from Rudy Steakhouse at the Chemeketa Parkade. It extends those leases for a significant amount of time, 20 years, I think. And that's the consent calendar.
Great. Any discussion? Yes, Councilor Nathan.
Yeah, I'll abstain from the minutes 3.1A and 3.1B as I was not in attendance at that meeting.
Okay. Anyone else? Discussion? Okay. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. We will move on to public hearings.
The City Council will now conduct a public hearing for the purpose of reviewing the Planning Commission's decision approving associated land use approvals for property located at 3010 Silverton Road Northeast. The criteria applicable to the decision are SRC 225.005E2, 240.005D, 220.005F3, and SRC 804.025D. Testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed toward the applicable criteria or other criteria which the person believes to apply to the decision. A failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue shall preclude appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals on that issue. A similar failure to raise constitutional issues relating to proposed conditions of approval precludes an action for damages in circuit court. The hearing will be conducted with staff presentation first, followed by testimony from the following. The applicant is limited to 10 minutes. The appellant, Lansing Neighborhood Association, is limited to 10 minutes. Other interested parties are limited to 3 minutes, and the applicant's rebuttal is limited to 5 minutes. A yellow light will appear at the podium when 1 minute remains, and a red light will appear when your time has expired. Please conclude your testimony when the red light appears.
Thank you very much. I'm going to call up the applicant representative, Mark. Oops, I'm sorry, staff. God, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Okay, you get to go first then.
All right. Good evening. I'm Pamela Cole, case manager for the appeal of design review, conditional use, site plan review, driveway approach permit case 1705. I'd like to request that the presentation, staff report, and attachments be entered into the record. The applications were submitted in March and June of this year and deemed complete in August. The Planning Commission decision was issued September 21st, and Lansing Neighborhood Association filed a timely appeal. The state mandated deadline date is January 22nd, 2018. The subject property is about 3.3 acres. It's located at the intersection of a collector, Lansing, and a major arterial, Silverton Road Northeast, west of Interstate 5. Waldo Middle School and Washington Elementary are southwest of the site on Lansing. The subject property is zoned CR, retail commercial. On the property, the southern area was formerly zoned single-family residential and was rezoned in 1999. The surrounding properties are zoned RS, single-family residential, CG in purple there, general commercial, and CR shown in red. Adjacent development includes some retail and service businesses to the north and the west. There's a bottling plant to the north, an equipment business to the east, and single-family residences and schools to the south and west. The intersection at Lansing is signalized and has striped crosswalks. There's an existing transit stop along the north property line, and there are sidewalks continuous along both frontages. There are also striped crosswalks at the intersection of Hamel Street Northeast and Lansing Avenue Northeast that go over to the school campus. Obviously, I took these pictures a while ago and we still had leaves on the trees. So this was a large tree that's located on the Silverton side, and we've asked in the conditions that it should be preserved if the city's urban forester agrees that that's feasible. The existing sidewalks along both frontages are in poor condition. The conditions of approval require right-of-way dedication along both streets, street trees, and street lights, and staff is recommending in the appeal staff report that council amend the conditions slightly to clarify that new public sidewalks would also be provided along both streets. Those would be pulled away from the existing street pavement and toward where the apartments would be constructed, and that would improve pedestrian safety. This is the northwest corner of the property near the intersection, and this area would be the location of a proposed secondary play area that would be fenced. These are some of the businesses on the north side of Silverton and showing part of the intersection and signal. This is towards the center and western edge of the property. This looks toward the south property line where there are some existing single-family dwellings just south of the subject property. One of the conditions is that there would be an 8-foot wall constructed along that south property line. And this is the business directly east of the property. There would also be a site obscuring fence and landscaping on that side. The applicant's site plan includes 8 buildings with 12 units each, 151 parking spaces. There's a driveway opposite Sedona Avenue Northeast, a children's play area near the center of the development, and that secondary play area at the corner in the northwest. Again, both those play areas would be fenced. And then the 8-foot wall, I pointed out the location of that on the south property line. In the appeal letters that we've received from the Neighborhood Association, we want to highlight some of their primary concerns. The first issue was that they felt that the applicant didn't communicate with the Neighborhood Association and didn't ask them what their preferences were for development of the property. They've expressed a preference for development with small-scale neighborhood serving retail businesses. In the Salem Revised Code, we don't have a specific requirement that an applicant contact the Neighborhood Association. Staff does recommend that prior to development, and when we conduct pre-application conferences for these types of developments, we do give the applicant the information so they can do so. In this case, although the applicant's not proposing what the neighborhood would prefer, they are proposing a use that's allowed in the zone with the conditional use approval. Other issues that have been brought up by the Neighborhood Association are that they're concerned that the single entrance into the property wouldn't be adequate for emergency access, and they prefer that there be 2 driveways. In this case, there is a 3-lane wide driveway toward the southwest corner. There's 1 lane in, 1 left turn lane out, and 1 right turn lane out. This meets the Public Works and Fire Department requirements for location and configuration. The blue line shows the loop around the property, and the Fire Department would also require sprinklers and alarms in the buildings. Public Works requires the location across from Sedona because that minimizes turning conflicts between vehicles coming from opposite sides. The appellant also was concerned that there is a high water table and potential flooding, and that the proposal might make that worse. Increased impervious surface on the site could increase flooding and even spill over into the streets. As part of the process of development, the applicant would be able to provide stormwater facilities on the site that meet Public Works standards, and that would mitigate the stormwater impacts of the development. The applicant has pointed out that some of the schools in the area are crowded and the streets have significant traffic, primarily during school hours, with buses and cars dropping off students. We did get comments from the school district, and they projected that the proposed development would result in an increase of 34 students. Yes, we understand that traffic is an existing issue, and particularly at the drop-off and pickup times, as the neighborhood provided you some photographs of the situation that occurs. The projected average daily traffic in this case from the development was not enough to trigger a requirement that the applicant provide a transportation impact analysis or to provide improvements to the streets or the signals, such as additional lanes. Along with those concerns, the Neighborhood Association worries that there would be safety hazards for pedestrians and motorists. Some of the suggestions they offered including making the left turn signal from Silverton onto Lansing a 24/7 functioning signal. Right now it's only at certain times of day to increase pedestrian safety during the school hours when pedestrians are in the area. And another suggestion was to allow only a right turn into and out of the apartment complex. As we noted before, there are existing crosswalks at the turn signal and also across Hamel and Lansing to the south. And as we mentioned before, we are recommending that the sidewalks be reconstructed farther away from the street improvements, so that should help with pedestrian safety. We did talk with Public Works about the possibility of changing the signal to allow a left turn all the time from Silverton onto Lansing, and I was told that's not in the plan at this time. And we also asked if there could be a right turn only into and out of the property, and I spoke with the Assistant City Traffic Engineer, and in order to do that, there would need to be a median in the center of the street, and that would also affect traffic into and out of Sedona. So that would be forcing traffic either north or south, and could even increase the southbound traffic at the school. And he mentioned also it would force people to go in convoluted ways to get places where they have fairly quick access now, except at those very busy times. So another issue was that the Neighborhood Association believes that there wouldn't be enough on-site parking, and the suggestions include either not approving the apartments at this location or limiting them to about 48 units. And that would allow more on-site parking, and that would reduce overflow parking on the nearby streets. And there's currently quite a bit of on-street parking because many of the residents in the area have more than two vehicles that they could fit on their on-site parking. So they're often parking on the street already. And as we generally have to note, on-street parking is not allowed on collectors or on arterial streets, so there would not be on-street parking on Silverton or Lansing. And overflow parking would be allowed to go onto the local streets, including Hamel and Sedona. Those are public streets, and they're available to all members of the public, so that's probably what would occur with overflow parking. I asked the applicant if it would be possible to estimate how many additional parking spaces could be provided on site, and I received a sketch showing if you took out one of the 12-unit buildings, that would reduce the number of units, but it's not going to increase the number of parking spaces by many because of the configurations that would be required. And he also indicated that reducing the number of units by that much would also make the project infeasible financially. Another concern is that the 3-story buildings would be incompatible with the adjacent residences, and the neighborhood association suggested that they be limited to 2 stories. So the applicant provided an illustration showing where those buildings would be located in relation to the closest residences. The closest buildings would be more than 80 feet from that south property line. We'd have the concrete or masonry wall on the property line, and the design review guidelines and standards require a lot of trees to be planted in those parking areas and along that south property line. So there'd be significant screening as indicated here. And just as a comparison, if we didn't have apartments on this property, in the CR zone, buildings for other uses that would be permitted could be up to 50 feet tall, and they could be within 15 feet of that property line. The Planning Commission found that the applicant met the criteria, but staff's recommending that we do amend Condition 12 to clarify that the reconstructed sidewalks would be required. That ends my presentation, but I'm available for questions.
Thank you very much. Stick around, we'll have the public, and then we'll ask you some questions. Mark Shipman. Mark, you have 10 minutes. It's the outside amount of time.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. For the record, my name is Mark Shipman. I'm a land use attorney with Sawfield Griggs, 250 Church Street, Southeast, Suite 200, Salem, Oregon, 97301. Here this evening on behalf of the applicant and property owner, Mike Elias. Pamela did a great job as far as going through the staff report and talking about some of the key items here. And what I wanted to do is just take a few minutes this evening and talk to you about the application and how it satisfies all the applicable mandatory approval criteria, because that's what we need to judge this request by. And our position is that the combined applications do satisfy all of the mandatory approval criteria in the Salem Revised Code to site the proposed apartment project on this property. The planning staff have confirmed that to you in their staff report this evening, and the Planning Commission approved the request, also recognizing that subject to the 13 conditions of approval. The appellants have raised a couple of general issues to you in writing, and I suspect also they will be doing so orally. Important point to note is that they've not identified in their written materials which criteria the applicant fails to satisfy. The general issues raised by the appellants relate to lack of privacy, and then which goes to livability, I guess, parking, and access. And I want to address the issues raised by the appellant both in a practical manner and also in a legal manner. First, practically, I understand that no one likes the concept of apartment dwellers looking down on them into their backyards. However, that's not what we have in this situation. If you take a look at the site plan on both screens, whichever one's easiest for you to look at, as Pamela indicated, there are two buildings that are closest to the residential areas. The first is H, which is on the south side of the property there. And it's kind of hard to see with all the colors and the writing. But building H is on the very south end of the project, and building A is on the very west end of the project along Lansing Street. Building H would look to the back of 4 residential properties that abut along Hamel Street Northeast. And building H would look at them on a diagonal or direct, but there's 4 residential properties there that they could be looking at their backyards, not necessarily into their backyards. When you factor in that the applicant is required as a part of that 1999 zone change to erect a 8-foot wall along that southern border, together with the landscape buffer, that 15-foot landscape buffer all along there, that's a significant mitigation in that area. Building A along Lansing Street looks at 3 residential houses directly to the west, but it's not looking in their backyards, it's actually looking at their front yards. Those properties actually front on Lansing Street. To the further south happens to be the elementary school. Further north on Lansing happens to be other commercial retail zone property. So staff identified, I think, an important factor here is that these buildings, these apartments, are going to be 35 feet in height, which is 15 feet less than what any permitted use in a commercial zone could go into. If a permitted use went into that CR zone right now, they would not have to apply for a variance. They might not have to apply for a conditional use permit. They certainly wouldn't have to put in the landscape buffering that this applicant is being required to put in this case. And they could go up to 50 feet in height, which is 15 feet taller than what we're proposing. So let's talk about, we talked a little bit about what the applicant will be providing as far as landscaping, and so I don't want to reiterate that. But what I do want to talk about is, in addition to the 15-foot buffer that's on the south, you've got a parking lot that also separates the buffer yard from building H. And as Pamela noted, you've got at least an 80-foot buffer between building H and the applicant's southerly property line. If you take a look at an aerial photograph of those houses that front on Hamel Street, those houses are set back from their north property line, which happens to be our south property line, anywhere from 30 to 50 feet, those current houses. So there's quite a bit of a buffer between building H and those existing residences. We don't believe that the proposal rises to a level of significant impact with respect to livability in that way. And we'll look forward to hearing from the appellant with respect to what evidence they'll bring as to how those few apartment units that are looking south or those few apartment units that are looking west truly impacts that livability of that neighborhood area. The next issue that appellants raise relates to parking, and Pamela did a good job of addressing that. They used an apartment complex on Hawthorne as support that this project would have adverse impact parking on Silverton Road and Lansing. And the staff's identified there can be no parking on Silverton Road or Lansing Street. There can be parking on the local streets around that, but it's not the applicant's intent that they do that. They've overparked this project by 7 stalls. And you may say, well, big deal, 7 stalls. Well, it's 7 stalls that they're going to be that they're proposing to add into this, which is over and above what's required. Not only that, but we submitted to staff, I believe Pamela should have gotten that today. We submitted to staff a parking plan, and if we didn't, I've got one here this evening that I can provide to the council that addresses, that identifies not only where the visitor parking will be, and the visitor parking will be designated. It'll be signed that it is truly visitor parking. And I think we've also identified that the individual apartment units will have specified parking. One of the things that the applicant who's here this evening, if you'd like to hear from him, brought to my attention tonight is that this property is going to be professionally managed. It's going to be professionally managed. They're going to have rules related to parking. They're going to have rules related to, and I guess that I'm going to use the term best practices will be followed with respect to where cars can be parked on the property, where cars can't be parked off the property. They're going to identify that there can't be any cars that would be inoperable. There's just common sense things that you would think would be applied and adhered to in this case. And with it being professionally managed, that I believe that property manager will impose additional rules with respect to the residential contracts that those tenants will be signing that will lay out what the rules of and the expectations for the project are. Bottom line, we satisfy the parking requirements in the code, and that's really should be the end of that discussion. The appellant also raises a number of issues related to access, circulation, emergency access, and I think that Pamela did a good job with respect to identifying that the Public Works Department, engineering staff, and the fire department have already signed off on all those elements, and they feel like the proposal in front of you is the best proposal possible for the proposed layout for those apartments. At this time, I do want to enter into the record a letter explaining some legal arguments that I have. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on those legal arguments because really what they go to is that this application on this property relates to something that I think is extremely important for the city of Salem, and it's important for us as Oregonians. And that goes to the point of that this is needed housing on what we call buildable land. And the importance of this being needed housing is that the city is required to only apply clear and objective criteria in their code towards this particular application or applications. And also any conditions of approval, either individually or cumulatively, cannot discourage the development of needed housing through unreasonable cost or delay, which is really what it appears the Appellant Association is trying to do in this case. As you know, through the Salem Housing Needs Analysis Study, the City of Salem has determined there's a significant need in our community for more multifamily housing. Specifically, there's a deficit for multifamily housing, and this property and project, as approved, would help in reducing that deficit. We believe that the appellant is raising issues related to criteria that are not clear and objective, and as such, we don't believe they can or should be applied, as the appellant seeks that they should be applied in this case. As I note in my letter, the applicant and architect have provided substantial evidence of literally complying with all of the applicable approval criteria as conditioned. It is feasible for the applicant to meet the criteria, and as such, this combined application should be approved as modified as proposed by staff. I'm happy to address any questions that the council may have at this time. Otherwise, I can address more on rebuttal.
Councilor Anderson.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Shipman. I have a couple questions. First one relates to Condition 6. Condition 6 says the multifamily use shall contain no more than 96 units. Any future increase of the development beyond 96 dwelling units will acquire approval of a separate conditional use permit. Are there plans to increase? And if so, where do you put them on that piece of property?
I don't know. I don't know how you put them on there.
Yeah. So, I mean, my question is, why would that even be raised as a condition if there wasn't some talk about, well, we might make it bigger?
You know, who knows in the future? You know, what the condition essentially does, Councilor Anderson, is it essentially protects, essentially locks in place that they can do 96 now. And essentially sets the standard that, hey, if they need to do something more,
they have to come back to us again.
They got to come back to you again and go through this whole process.
And there'll be maybe some different criteria established from the baseline we've done now.
There could be different criteria.
Sure.
The neighborhood could change. There's a whole host of factors we don't know.
Okay. Then 2 more questions, if I may. I guess the mayor will let me, since he's talking to the city attorney right now. At what level of the market are these units aimed? I mean, are they upper end, lower end, middle?
I'm going to hazard a guess and say they're middle. Is that accurate?
Well,
what I can do
you
is
can address that in rebuttal. If you could address,
I'll have the applicant come up and testify as to what
okay,
the
or you can
rents are gonna be.
testify for him after you've talked to him. And then the final one is there was some discussion by Ms. Cole about the stormwater issues and mitigation and impervious services. Impervious surfaces. Are there plans someplace already in place to capture any runoff, any swales or holding tanks or anything else? Or how are you going to deal with the runoff now from the parking lots?
So as you know, the new stormwater requirements are pretty significant.
Okay.
And they're, in a lot of cases, they're a challenge to meet. And I don't recall in the packet whether the architect or the engineer has already pulled together a proposed stormwater management plan. But before building permits can be issued, they're going to have to go through the process with Public Works and get that approved.
So that is really outside of the conditions, because you have to do that in order to pull the building permits and to build whatever you're going to build.
You do.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Shipman, what's the standard for that stormwater retention? Is it 100% has to remain on site or leave site? Do you know what the standard looks like?
I don't, but
okay.
I'll talk to our architect and I'll have that answer for you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Cook?
Thank you. Thank you for coming in today. So when you received the appeal, or when you received these concerns from the neighbors, did you look at turning Building H at all 90 degrees so that it wouldn't be looking out on that way?
I don't believe that there'd be a way to turn Building H in a 90-degree fashion and still be able to meet the aisle widths and for driving and also setbacks. That wouldn't work.
And as far as access, you only considered vehicle access, not any other modes of transportation access as far as paths or footpaths?
No, we're into pedestrians. Take a look at on the site plan.
The sidewalks on both sides of the driveway?
Yes, and then take a look at the north. On the very north, and again, I apologize because this is a busy site plan. So at the north, you're going to see a curvilinear path that goes up towards Silverton Road. And so we're required as a part of the connectivity, as a part of the design review standards, to provide connectivity from those units out to Silverton Road. That's done there. And then also there are, I don't see sidewalks necessarily with respect to the plan going out to Lansing, but those units that directly abut, you'll see those units that abut in A and B. You'll see a darkened area that goes from the units to Lansing. That's the connectivity. Those are the sidewalks that go directly from those units. And typically what we have is residents that live elsewhere that would live within the center part of the project. If they're going to be walking out to Lansing, they'll just follow the sidewalks on site and then head out that way.
Thank you.
Councilor Lewis.
Thanks, Mr. Shipman, for coming down. 2 quick questions, if I could. I'm assuming that you are in favor of the amendment to Condition 12 and are not objecting to that. That's to include the sidewalks.
I think code requires it, Councilor Lewis, and so am I in favor of it? Not really, but I think the code requires it. So I think it's something that is reasonable under the circumstances.
Okay. The other question. And I think this has to do with Condition 2 and the wall or the southern boundary of the property. Did I hear that there was going to be an 8-foot wall there and shrubbery?
You did. Yes. Yeah.
Are we concerned about invasion, or what's the purpose of the wall?
You know, Councilor Lewis, that was required back in 1999 as a part of the zone change. So as staff had noted, Previously, this property on the northern portion had always been zoned commercial. The southern portion of it had been zoned RS, single-family residential. In '99, the prior property owner came in, got that changed, and I believe as a part of the conditions in that zone change, it required that solid 8-foot wall. Now, in some applications, and we did this with Mountain West Investment Corporation down at Battle Creek, we actually came in with a request to modify that, to adjust that, because the neighbors didn't want that wall in place. The neighbors didn't want to stare at a wall. They wanted to be able to have screening so they could see that landscaping in that case. I don't believe these neighbors want that. And so we've not heard from anybody that they want anything less than an 8-foot wall. We're okay putting in that 8-foot wall, thus satisfying that condition of that 1999 zone change.
Councilor Hoy.
Thank you. I don't have a question. I just have a comment. And, you know, as we prepare for these meetings and trying to understand the issue fully and reading through our packets, we have to try to decipher that and make sense of it. And I can't make any more sense of it tonight than I made this weekend reading this at home. And so maybe this is more of a comment for staff. I would hope that we could get some really clear maps in the future so we can understand these issues, because that is a mess and really difficult to follow.
I could have, if I could have staff toggle back to the site plan. The site plan is a lot clearer than this circulation plan, because this shows the site plan, it shows circulation. There's a lot of stuff going on here. There really is. And what's amazing is that this actually, when you blow it up onto a bigger sheet, it's actually fairly clear. I mean, it's very clear. But in this format, and when you're trying to 8.5 by 11, forget it. You got to go at least 11 by 17. Go back to the site plan if you can.
I don't know where.
Okay. Here, I'll toggle back. There it is, right there.
That?
Yeah, no. We all have professional backgrounds.
No, you had it just a little while ago. Go forward. Yeah. There we go. Yeah.
Okay.
I think out of all the slides I saw tonight, I think this one's the best. Is showing the site plan.
Exactly my point.
I know.
Councilor Anderson.
Thank you. This is, I don't know if this is for you, Mr. Shipman. It might be a question of staff. I'm just trying to get a visual on 80 feet. And so I'm looking at this city, the council chambers here, and my guess is that's about 60 feet. And I'd love if somebody on the staff could figure out how far it is from one wall to the other wall, so that'll give us give me an idea of how long 80 feet is. I'm looking at you, Casey.
1 foot, 2 foot.
Okay.
So one final thing. I don't know that we got the parking plan in, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it to the clerk right now.
Okay.
I've got a 11 by 17. Sorry, it's the best I got. But I'll give that to her in order to get that into the record. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. It's now the opportunity for the neighborhood group. I need to know who will be representing the neighborhood group. Virginia, Patty? Patty? Yes, I am first. You're going to represent the neighbor? Okay, you get 10 minutes, Patty.
I get 10 minutes?
Yeah, neighborhood group gets 10 minutes. Okay? Okay, but you don't have to use it all.
Oh, can I give it to her? Whatever, I don't use 10 sheets.
Why don't you split the 10 minutes and each of you do 5?
She's already in the
What do you want to do?
She's bossy.
Want to take all 10?
Hi, Mayor.
Hi, how are you?
My name is Patty Titton. I'm chair of Lansing Neighborhood and have been living in this neighborhood for over 20 years. I've been chair for 10 years. So I have dealt with the good and the bad in this neighborhood for a long time. And I have testified to this council many times. And so I wish to thank the mayor and the staff and the council's members for their support tonight for us people that don't normally get to speak up. I had sent in an appeal. I was the one that did the appeal thing up there on April 6th. And I may not have known all the facts of the developer, but I did the best I could at the moment. And I thought I did a pretty good job. And I was told by my fellow members, board members, that I did do a pretty good job. Our first and number one complaint is that they never came to our neighborhood association and talked to us personally. And we could have told them what we thought of their development. We consider this rude and completely unprofessional of them. I don't care who they are. We are the neighborhood. We have to live with their development after they're built and gone. They don't. We have to live with the possibility of many things that happen after they're gone. They don't. They have their nice houses on their nice property and their nice neighborhoods. We don't. That is our number one complaint against them. Our number two complaint is that we felt we didn't have enough time to answer any questions against their development. And we wish we could have had more time, so we could have had a better argument against them. For the last 2 years, we have been working on a master plan with 2 neighborhoods, and that includes our neighborhood and the state hospital grounds, NISCA. We have input in that 2-year plan that we want multi-level apartments mixed in with single residence adults, as well as duplexes and other, plus businesses, medical places, and we included schools, churches, and other important factors in our neighborhood. We do not need this 96 apartment complex because we have plenty of places to buy in this neighborhood. We have some rentals, but we do have ownership. This is what we want. We want single development homes because we want the pride of our ownership in our neighborhood. Already we have some issues in our neighborhood with hoarding and other houses that are going downhill because of abandonment. We call them zombie houses. I don't know if you heard of them, but I have. I can name you several houses that are on my block or near my block that have no owners in them. Instead, we have trespassers, people who break windows and break into the homes and vandalize these homes, and the property is never maintained and taken care of. These are the issues that we want to concentrate on. I can't see how 96 apartments will eliminate the homeless issue in this town when we have thousands and thousands of people that are living on the streets or in the parks. And I do know about the parks because I'm on the Parks Board. And I know the complications of people living in the parks. And I do know about the needles and the trash in the parks from the homeless people. These people don't care about Salem. They only care about their own personal needs. When you consider 96 apartments, I do not see 34 children. I see 2 to 3 children per apartment. And that would be over 288 children crossing the street on a daily basis. Where already for an hour each morning and each afternoon, there are buses and cars and people trying to get to school or picking up. Have you ever seen a car accident on Lansing and Silverton? We have. And we've also seen people killed and injured because somebody wasn't paying attention driving down Lansing. They were speeding, taxiing, doing their stupid cell phones. And do they care about the person they hit? No. They don't care about anybody else but themselves. That is not the kind of neighborhood we want. We have a lot of families in our neighborhood, And I know for certain that I've talked to a lot of families. There are people that are screaming at people down on Hamel Street because they're going 25 miles or more. They also do it on Lansing. They also do it down Park Avenue. Traffic is really bad down these streets. And they don't care about the children that are crossing the street or playing in their front yards. What I'm trying to say now, and I hope you consider it, I don't care about the parking and a half. There's nobody drives around with a half a car. And you say they will park on Hamel Street? I live on Hamel Street. And Sedona? Have you ever tried to drive down Sedona where there's 2 cars parked on either side? Hamel Street is basically the same way. Longmouth Marcy was the other border of the 96 apartments. We don't have enough parking on those streets for their parking. My suggestion to my neighborhood association, if this 96 apartment does go up, that we apply for restriction on parking and on our streets. That means only the owners on those streets will be able to park, and the guests will be permitted these little white pieces of paper in their dashboards. And I have a lot of neighbors who like to give a lot of parties. And I hear them in my backyard a lot. This is a very vibrant, very active neighborhood. And these people actually care about their property. I don't see how 96 apartments could care about their property. We have hoarding. Well, they have hoarding on their driveway. I mean, the possibilities are endless of what could happen. I'd rather guarantee what is happening in our neighborhood. Please look at our plan, our master plan. It does not include these apartments, buildings. We want a live, active, positive neighborhood, not a 96 overcrowding, where management says now that they will take care of the property. But what about 10 years from now? What about 20 years from now? Will they be around to take care of that property? And if we have any concern about that development, will we have any outlets for those concerns? Because they don't look like they're going to be over 100 years old. My age alone will tell you that I am 60. I won't be around for another 20. But I would sure like to leave a legacy where we can live in a positive, growing neighborhood. And thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Patty. Any questions? Councilor Lewis.
Hi, I just want to confirm that the neighborhood association talked about and agreed that they wanted an 8-foot wall on the southern border of this property.
We would like to have a bigger wall. These are apartments that are going to be 35 feet high. 8 foot doesn't match 30 feet high. Trees take 50 to 100 years to grow. And any tree person will tell you that. How can they guarantee those trees are going to grow fast? And how fast will they grow? These neighbors on Hamel and Marcy do not want anybody looking in their neighborhood, in behind their backyard and on their patio. Anyone. And 35 feet doesn't cut it.
Any further questions? Thank you, Patty, very much. Virginia Barker.
Thank you. Mayor Bennett, I'm glad you weren't injured when you took your fall. But I commend you for being brave enough to do it, because I'm not. Mayor Bennett and city councilors, my name is Virginia Barker. I'm the secretary-treasurer of the Lansing Association. I live at 3010 Starcourt Northeast, Salem, Oregon, 97301. I did submit written testimony, which I hope you've had a chance to review, complete with pictures. And I would like to make a clarification. There was a comment made by the attorney that The information I submitted said that there was on-street parking on Silverton Road in Lansing, and that is not what it says. It says there is no on-street parking, so I just wanted to clarify that. In addition to the written testimony, I'd like to remind you that the strategic plan that you just recently adopted included climate change issues. Cars sitting idling for periods contribute to greenhouse gases, which is a factor to climate change. The additional cars waiting to enter Lansing Avenue from the complex will create a lot of significant exhaust during peak school hours, excuse me. I have actually sat for about 20 minutes trying to get out on Lansing Street from any driveway or any street that's right along that school area. Also, there have been recently 2 apartment fires in our area. As more apartment complexes are developed, the incidence of these will likely increase and may result in a strain on the first responders as well as increased response time. If the city is going to continue improving these large apartment complexes, they need to also increase the number of first responders to handle this additional workload. In this year's budget preparations, the city chose not to make additional increases that were requested for the fire department. I hope you will carefully consider the concerns that have been brought forward to you. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Councilor Anderson.
I meant to say this for Ms. Tipton too, but thank you very much for your service in the neighborhood group, and I want to tell you that this was a very good letter you wrote, and as a former president of a neighborhood group myself, I know that's a lot of work and often a thankless job, but thank you both for your services for these many years.
Thank you for your kind words.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Bianca? Bianca, I can't quite see your last name.
Love.
Love, it is, okay.
Yes. Hi there. So, I live at 2975 Sedona Avenue, off the street that will be directly across from where the apartment's driveway is going to be. There's a lot of things I could say personally about this place, but I'm going to keep it to a professional manner just because that's what we're here for. Some of the things I'd like to bring up is the fact that, you know, we were asked if we want an 8-foot wall built. We don't want an apartment there at all. There's a lot of stuff that happens in the neighborhood that's not acceptable already, and that's without 95 additional bodies or homes there to affect what happens in the neighborhood. I personally have woken up in the morning to find drug needles in my front yard. I'm a single mom with 4 kids. I work very hard for the things that I have. I've also had strangers come in off of the street, jump through my neighbor's yard into my yard, and go out the other side of my backyard, which is really weird when you're sitting back there with your kids trying to enjoy an evening. My neighbors on the other side of me have also had things stolen from their property. So, you know, 96 more people or families just across the street just makes it so that there could be an increase in crime. Above and beyond that, the schools are actually, in fact, already overcrowded. I know this because my son was recently moved from one class to another because there were 35 students in one classroom alone. And that's just in the elementary school. Waldo, the middle school, and the high school are also overcrowded, and this apartment will only cause more problems with that. So if they're going to expand the neighborhood, they're going to have to expand the classes in the schools as well. Most recently, I'd like to also point out there's no crosswalk markings on Sedona Avenue, and there is a tremendous amount of children that walk to and from school on both the sidewalks, particularly on Sedona. And so honestly, if they put a median, that would be a great idea, because I can totally see people deciding to zip right across from the driveway through Sedona, as many people do, in speed, and potentially a child could get hurt or killed with something like that happening. I'm sure that you guys are all aware, and if you're not, I'll make you aware now. There were 2 car accidents since the last hearing until this hearing, right there on that street corner where they proposed the secondary play area. One of those accidents was on October 1st. The other was on September 27th. The one on September 27th involved 5 injuries. 2 of the people hit by the cars were standing on that street corner, right on the other side of that fence that they proposed to build a play area in. So, you know, the traffic is really bad, and you can look up those accidents. They're on record, I'm sure. If you go to Google and look it up, they're there. One of the people hit on the side was a child that was 3 years old. Fortunately, there were no deaths in the area. So, I mean, just being somebody that's lived in the neighborhood for 8 years, who is a homeowner, who's concerned about their property values, crime and people's safety, schools overcrowding, I just don't think that it's a good idea to put that many apartments right there on that land. It would be more common sense to put single-family residences so that people like myself can continue to get ahead and grow the city the right way, which is through homeownership, and paying taxes, and having wholesome families. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Any questions for Bianca? Yes. Councilor Kaiser.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I actually grew up in this neighborhood for a little bit. I lived off of Chester on Candace, if you know where that's at. Went to Washington.
Yeah.
So I'm really familiar with this lot because I think I played in it as like an 8 and 9-year-old. What would you ideally like to see on this? Because obviously this is not going to sit vacant forever.
No.
It's smack dab in the middle of the city. What does the neighborhood want this to be?
I mean, I can't speak for the neighborhood association because I just became aware that there even was one. Some, single, 4 kids, too busy. I'm just so busy all the time. Honestly, if you want my opinion, I'm a fan of tiny houses. And the reason I am is because I've seen this piloted in other areas. Arizona has a great tiny hood neighborhood where people who can't necessarily afford a home that's $150,000 or $113,000 even, because that's what I bought my house for, they can buy these little houses, and it can be a startup property for them that they can buy for like $80,000 or $90,000, maybe even $60,000, depending on what they can afford. And I've seen this very successfully demonstrated, like I said, in Arizona, where they have people. I mean, somebody was talking about students that are coming out of school and they're homeless. This would be a great way for somebody to go into a property and be able to pay a lesser amount, maybe even something less than what rent would cost, and be able to own a small home, which then could be resold. I pay like $850 for my property. I bought it for $113,900, and if somebody bought a property that was a tiny home, that mortgage would be probably half of that. So it could actually make homeownership realistic for a lot of people, especially for people that can't afford a home, let alone an apartment, because apartment's rent is just as much as my mortgage, if not more. So that's just my opinion.
It just sounds, when I'm hearing you say that, it sounds like, and from your previous comments, you're really concerned about home ownership.
I think that home ownership is a great thing to have.
And the other takeaway I was getting from your comments was you're concerned about non-home ownership being tied to increased crime. Because at least from what I'm hearing, it sounds like apartments equal more crime, home ownership equals less crime. Or from your perspective.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Just an additional question. Thanks for coming down, Ms. Love. So as far as enforcement, just to dovetail on what Councilor Kaiser said, when you have situations where people are running through your backyard using it as a path, or things are being stolen, or things are generally uncomfortable, how are you reporting these, and what's your experience with the follow-through and the time? You'd mentioned the 2 fires, the accidents, response time and experience on those.
Honestly, I've called when I had issues, so things stolen, needles in the front yard, drug activity in the neighborhood, whatever's happening, I call and report it. And they come out, maybe have a couple questions, and that's it. They don't really do anything as far as the police do, like with the trespassing or anything like that. There's nothing they really do. I even found some weird person's ID in my yard, and they couldn't do anything about it. And as far as the fires, yes, actually, I did have both neighbors on either side of me, their places have caught on fire. I can't speak to my neighbors that live, like if I'm sitting in my house, neighbors to the right, I don't know, because when I got home that day, the fire truck was already there. But the other house on the other side of me, when that caught fire, response time was fast because I was the one that helped them put it out. I got it out before the fire trucks came. And it was because I previously put out fires when I was a child. So the response time from the fire department wasn't as fast as I was. It was kind of fast, but they blocked up the whole street and no one could use the street for quite a while. We were trying to leave and go out of town, and we had to wait about an hour for them to clean up and get their truck out of the way so that we could leave.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Claudine Shaw.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilman. My name is Claudine Shaw. I live at 3040 Laux Court Northeast in Salem, in Lansing neighborhood. One, I agree with everything that's been said so far. On the wall that's being put up that is 8 foot high, 8 foot is nothing. there are 2 streets, actually, Marcia and Hamill, that have houses behind this complex. My children have a house that has a development that has been put up recently. They have now a 12-foot hedge, but the people that live next to them can set out on their patio and look down. Even though it's a ways away, they can look down into the yard, they can look into the dining room. Fortunately, the people are very cooperative, and they only do it during certain times of the day when the kids are usually gone at school or something like that. But 8-foot wall, it does not give the privacy that we might want to think it does. It was mentioned, I believe, about 2 years ago, we started working on a neighborhood plan with the City of Salem. The City of Salem paid for employees to work on this plan. They put a lot of time into it. They did a good job. We had several people that attended from our neighborhood and the other neighborhood and gave up time. And it seems to me that now this plan is going astray, that this money and time was just spent for nothing. That's all I have, I guess. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Claudine. Any questions? Thank you. Joyce Judy?
Good evening, Mayor Bennett, councilors. My name is Joyce Judy, and I live in Ward 5, and I'm here in my capacity as land use chair for the Northgate neighborhood. We live kind of adjoining to that area. There have been some questions and concerns by our neighborhood, predominantly relating to traffic. I heard staff say earlier that there was no plans to put in a left turn light at Lansing and Silverton Road, and I would like to question that. Just a couple of weeks ago, you guys had a fellow who is a professional who spoke to you about pedestrian issues. And he said an interesting thing. He said, even if the code says one thing, that doesn't necessarily mean it's the best solution for pedestrians. And I don't think that not having a left turn light at Silverton and Lansing is in the best interest of pedestrians. It slows traffic down, yes, but who's more important, the autos or the pedestrians? Yes, it's going to slow traffic down coming from, what? I don't know, from the west and from the east. But that's okay, because we just had an accident not too very long ago that she referenced, in which she said that there was a big accident, car turning left, car coming on, smasheroo, hitting 2 pedestrians. The people in the cars were injured. It was a horrific accident, and we're really lucky that nobody was killed. But that's the very thing I'm talking about. Regardless of whether this project gets approved or not, there needs to be a left turn light. Not a lane, but a left turn light there. Does it need to be 24/7? Perhaps not. But can it be done in a different way? Additionally, if you think about the complex and the single entrance into the complex, let's assume that there's a fire at 4 o'clock in the afternoon or at 8 o'clock in the morning. When you have all of that traffic from people going to schools, how the heck are fire departments going to get in from that one entrance? And what's it going to do? Is it going to completely block traffic on those streets? Don't know. So regardless of whether you approve it, there seems to be some things that need to be done to mitigate traffic a little bit more in that area. So that's all I have for you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any questions? Yes, Karen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Joyce, thank you. I'm just curious, the left turn signal, are you talking about a left turn signal on Silverton Road to get onto Lansing
Correct.
in either direction?
Yes.
Is there's
Well, it doesn't need to be from the opposite direction because there's nothing to turn into.
I mean, on Silverton Road, east and west, having a left turn signal. If you're Silverton Road eastbound or Silverton Road westbound, is that what you're talking about?
It would only be
If you're
eastbound
going
because there's
east
nothing.
on Silverton, you would turn left.
Right.
If you're going west
Oh, yeah,
on
you turn right.
Silverton, there is no
Sure.
reason.
You can't turn left twice.
Right. Now, you might, I think that it might be helpful, actually, if people were talking about a right turn only on Lansing. It might be better to have a left turn light there. Because again, your traffic coming out would move more smoothly.
So what's in place right now?
Just a light.
It's just a light, just a yield, left turn yield. No,
Yep.
no,
No, it's just
dedicated
a
anything.
light.
Okay. Right. Okay. Thanks. Left turn during school hours only. Okay. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So is everyone clear on what the lights do now? Yeah, we'll ask staff. Why don't we have staff explain that? Thank you, Joyce.
Thank you.
Mr. Shipman, you have a chance to rebut. Oops, Sarah first? Okay. Come on.
Okay, so I should point out a little bit better where the left turns are here. So going northbound on Lansing, you do have a left turn lane and a left turn signal. Coming westbound, you have a left turn signal, but it doesn't operate 24/7.
Coming west on Silverton Road.
West on Silverton to turn onto Lansing. Yeah, so that one doesn't operate 24/7. And
What is the light that was just being talked about? I'm not clear. That one, isn't
I
it?
think that's the one you were requesting.
So we have a left turn light in place during certain hours of the day?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. That's clear.
Can I ask, what are the hours that it's in use?
I don't know. Robert Chandler, do you know?
And why is it restricted to just a certain hour?
That's a good question, and Public Works has more
Robert
knowledge.
Chandler, Assistant Director of Public Works. Pamela, can you put me on to slide number 5? That would help. One more.
Well,
So I've got the aerial.
I don't know what happened to the photo. That's very strange. Try again from that side. I think I have this one at the end again.
This is called PowerPoint harassment.
I have no idea why the picture
That'll do.
disappeared. Okay.
That'll do. So for orientation, as Ms. Cole spoke, Silverton Road is a major arterial. If you head east on Silverton Road, out to the right-hand side, as you're looking at the screen, you'll find I-5, but also connected there is Lancaster. Going west, out toward the left-hand side of the screen, is where Portland Road is. So it carries a lot of traffic. And their intersection, and there's a T where Lansing comes up, and then there's that commercial development on the opposite side, the north side of Silverton Road. What we have now is a signal that is for traffic coming from Lansing Road, turning left or right. You certainly have traffic for Silverton going through or turning left onto Lansing Road. And that left turn coming from, I'm pointing with my hands on the screen, from Silverton Road, from the east, from Lancaster, heading westbound at certain hours during school hours. At the same time you have crossing guards, I think, I don't know the exact hours, is when we activate that left turn signal. And that's done for pedestrian safety during the times you have the most pedestrians there in the crosswalk. The reason it is not 24/7 illustrates why you have challenging intersections like this, where you try to balance increasing the safety of pedestrians with managing the safety of vehicular traffic. What they said is very true. It's a challenge for us, for Public Works, for the city. If you made it 24/7, because there is no left turn lane, there's no center line, you might have a car stopped in the fast lane westbound on Silverton waiting for that light at night with cars coming through at fairly high speed on Silverton. And that's the compromise we're trying to meet. I don't know when we did the change for the lights, but adding that left turn during school hours certainly enhanced the safety of pedestrians in that crosswalks during the times they're most used. But adjusting that, you're compromising vehicle safety, congestion, at times when there are fewer pedestrians there, and it's a balance. It's hard for us, and that was the reasons for it. Their comments are valid, but that's the traffic engineering. Very qualitatively, I don't have the numbers in front of me, if that's helpful.
I will tell you that the comment that the center lane is the speed lane at night makes me uncomfortable. Yeah. I don't know what speed limit is out there, but to assume that on Silverton Road there is a speed passing lane kind of
I spoke badly, which is why.
Okay, I just want to check with you.
No, it's true. It's a four-lane highway, a four-lane rather arterial, two travel lanes in each direction. People making right-hand turns into the businesses, you pass them in the left lane and come back over. It just, it's not really passing lane like you had on the freeway. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
35?
Yeah.
I don't know it. Is it 35?
It is.
35, yeah.
So there is no speed lane out there except as is allowed by lack of enforcement or willingness of drivers to scofflaw. One or the other. Okay.
Robert, do you think that the left turn is active when the school crossing?
That's my understanding. It's active during school hours. There might be times when we put on the school zone flashing lights, but I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
So I don't recall if there are any school warning lights on Silverton. Do you know? There are. Okay. So presumably when those are flashing to do 20 mile per hour, that's when the left turn would be.
That makes sense. I don't know the answer.
That makes sense. Then you're slowing the traffic at the same time as you're allowing the left. So you're not having the same problem you would with other parts of the day when you'd have 35-mile-an-hour traffic. So that would make sense to me.
Okay. Councilor Lewis.
I forgot to ask this, but the nearest transit stop, I don't know if I saw it in here or not.
Yeah, it's just right there on the north, and the Transit Authority has asked us to make sure that we keep that, and we certainly intend to.
So there's nothing on the north side of Silverton Road as far as transit?
I didn't look on the north side. This is adjacent to the proposed complex, and then you do have the signalized crosswalk that would go to the north side if people were trying to get access to the transit stop.
The transit stop is a pull-out transit stop, or is it a stop in the traffic transit?
Not a pull-out at this point.
Did you look at requiring a pull-out in that location?
We'd be moving the sidewalks back. We didn't have a requirement to create a lane for a pullout because the traffic impact analysis requirement wasn't
Where's the
triggered.
transit stop into town on that site? That looks like the one to Chemeketa, but which one goes into town? Is there one nearby that would be the westbound? I was curious.
I think you can actually see the bus on this photograph, which is kind of funny.
Okay.
And the tree is close to the transit stop, so that's one of the reasons why we wanted to keep the tree if we can.
Okay. Councilor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I got the right signals from the Deputy City Manager that this room itself is 65 feet.
Somewhere between 60 and 65. And
so that was a pretty good estimate, I have to say. It's 60 feet. I was thinking of football field, how many 10-yard segments, or swimming pools. That's I'm more familiar with. Want to know about the projected traffic increase. What did you do to arrive at the projected traffic increase? Do you rely on the fact that there is 1.5 spaces per apartment and use that, or do you have some sort of national engineering standard that says your average apartment produces this number of trips per day, or how did that work?
Right. I could answer that, or Robert would know a little more about it than I do. Right. So it's based on the number of apartments, and there's a standard factor that they use to generate the traffic from that. And it's so well below the 1,000 that would be required.
You've answered my next question. How close was it to require one? And you're saying it's well below. Then my final question, I think, is about the Nesca Lansing plan, and I think maybe Lisa Anderson Ogilvie might be able to answer this question. How does the plan deal with this particular lot, or does it even deal with this particular lot?
Good evening, Lisa Anderson Ogilvie. I'm your Deputy Community Development Director, and you will be having a public hearing on the Nesca Lansing Plan in later in December. The plan recommends that this property stay zoned commercial retail and have neighborhood scale retail. That's in the aspirational part of the plan. If you recall, neighborhood plans have a component that the council adopts that's consistent with the comprehensive plan, and then the neighborhood gets to be aspirational in the rest of the plan.
All right. Thank you very much.
Can I still ask a question of Lisa?
Yes, you can.
Okay. Sorry. Sorry.
That's okay.
What is the lag time between having an aspirational plan and then actually changing the zoning? How long of a process is that?
Well, generally, with the past neighborhood plans we've adopted, we haven't then gone in and seek to make all the changes that they recommend in their neighborhood plan. We've picked projects. So, for example, we're working on the State Street Corridor Plan. That was a major project that came out of the Nen-Cessna plan. We changed some street classifications in Morningside that came out of their plan. However, we don't just say, oh, they want this whole area rezoned commercial, retail, or mixed use, and we don't then just go do that as the city. The neighborhood plan is used to help neighbors react to proposals that come forward, to help proponents decide what they want to do in a neighborhood because they know the neighbors have an idea of what they want. And then it helps city plan for transportation projects, park projects, et cetera. But we don't generally then take it and implement it. The zoning for this property would already allow what they want on the property, the neighborhood scale commercial. However, this zone does allow multifamily. The neighborhood plan does recognize that we need more multifamily. And you'll hear at the public hearing that Brian and Eunice did a lot of outreach at numerous events in the neighborhood, the schools, the parks. They went to all kinds of different groups, and they say that they heard loud and clear from folks that maybe aren't part of the neighborhood association but live in the neighborhood that they want more housing, and they want more affordable housing, and they want more apartments because they want to be able to stay in the neighborhood that they already live in.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions? I had one on the school district comment. Tell me about how that works. Do they just usually just submit a comment that says you will add X number of students to our...
Just one moment, I have to pull the original stuff.
Or do they request a denial or support, or how do they... I just can't remember what it looks like.
When we send out requests for comments, we send a notice out to the school district, and they respond with fairly standard comments saying how many students they project for each of the schools. So I did receive comments from that before the Planning Commission staff report was prepared. And Dave Friedenmacher with the school district, based on 96 new residences, predicted the estimated change in student enrollment would be 34, and that would be 5 students over capacity for the schools.
And that's, okay.
I have more detail if you like it, but that was the summary.
They don't ask for denial or conditions or anything like that?
No.
Okay. All righty. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you very much. Mr. Shipman, did you want to rebut?
Didn't he already?
You have 7 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess what I'd start off with by stating that Mr. Elias is proposing to put in a brand new $10 million investment on this property. This isn't some shoddy, schlocky project that's going in. This is going to be nice units. They're going to be finished similar, what he told me, to the Mountain West units. at Kaiser Station. So they're going to be nice finishes. The rents are going to be they've not established rents yet. The rents will be established once as they get closer towards finishing construction. But it's going to be market rate, whatever that's going to be. In my sense is that's going to be probably on the higher side. So these are going to be folks that are going to want to live in a nice apartment in a nice location, and they're going to have some pride of living there in this community. There's going to be an on-site manager. It'll be professionally managed, but there will also be an on-site manager that will be living in one of the units on the property. Fire concerns were raised. All of these units are required by state law to be sprinkled. So this isn't like older apartment stock that is out there that has a risk, or older housing stock. These new units are required to be sprinkled, and all of them are sprinkled. There was issues that were brought up with respect to safety. I think Ms. Love brought this up, and as a part of the design review criteria and requirements, the architect essentially had to satisfy all of those safety elements that are built into the code with respect to a project of this type. The staff has identified that the applicant satisfied those. The Planning Commission has found that we satisfy those. So this is as safe as the code requires. And no one's come to us and said, why don't you try this, or why don't you add this? That's not happened. I can tell you with respect to traffic, which was another significant issue that was raised, traffic has been driven by the Public Works Department. They were the ones that said they would not allow us any access off of Silverton Road, either a right in or a right out. They would only allow one entrance off of Lansing. And so that kind of defines on that property what you can do. And so what the architect came up with, and what Public Works' engineering staff has approved, and the fire department has approved, is a 3-lane access at that location, being able for ingress and egress, and right across from the local street there. And that's the best that the engineers have come up with respect to that property. You know, the traffic, Councilor Anderson, is on this site is I think staff identified it being significantly less, and I think it's around 600 vehicle trips per day. Okay, and if Mr. Elias put in, and if he put in one coffee stand out there, a drive-through coffee stand, that would generate almost 800 trips per day at that location. One stand. We're talking 1,200 square feet. Okay. The site is currently zoned for CR, and I just don't think that the neighbors would want to have a commercial development out there with the amount of traffic that a retail center would drive onto either Lansing or onto Silverton Road. We believe that this is a really good request from a traffic standpoint, from a traffic safety standpoint. And I think the architect and the engineers have really worked hard with respect to coming up with a design that they feel provides the best safety possible. No question with respect to the plan. The schools, our office does a lot of work with Salem Kaiser as far as putting in and planning new schools. And I think the memo that Pamela got from Dave Friedmaker is standard with what they get. They just identify, hey, this is based on their models, based on their projections, and they're pretty good. They're pretty close to what they can project, but they don't know what kind of tenants are going to be moving in there, whether they're single, whether they're married, whether they have kids, they don't have kids. But based on probabilities, based on their projections, they can kind of estimate. And we currently, in the district, there's a lot of students in our district, and a lot more students are coming in annually, and it's something that we're going to have to deal with. And I think what the Salem Kaiser School District is saying in their memo, if I can read between the lines of the letter, is saying, hey, we're just telling you what is likely to happen. The school will be slightly over capacity, but in our world, that's okay. And so, from our standpoint, we're not substantially impacting the elementary school either. In summary, this is a good request. I feel like clearly the applicants satisfied all their approval criteria. I think the Planning Commission did a good job as far as refining the conditions of approval. Staff has proposed an additional condition of approval, which we're okay with as far as the sidewalks. And I'd urge that you approve it as conditioned, and happy to answer any questions of you at this time.
I have one. The correlation between rental occupants and crime, I think, is a common conception. And I thought Ms. Love brought it up, and I thought expressed a sincere concern. Do you know anything about those kinds of, the correlation between people who rent and people who commit crime, or the impact of rentals on crime rates?
I can't.
Okay.
I have no correlation. I guess conceptually, if the rents are lower and the property isn't maintained and it's not kept up, I would say that you might have a greater likelihood of having people live there that would be less likely to follow rules.
Okay.
In this case, this is the contrary. This is brand new construction. It's going to be very nice. Like I said, Mr. Lyons.
No hoarding in the driveway, because Ms. Tipton brought that one up, and that's a horrible thought.
If you would like, we can add into the rules that there's no hoarding on any driveway or on the property whatsoever.
Okay.
No, I mean, on a serious matter, this is going to be a nice project, and I think that it's going to be different than what's there in the neighborhood now. But is it incompatible? No, it's not incompatible. I feel like in some cases it's going to provide a more of an anchor for that neighborhood with respect to other improvements that could occur there.
Okay. Any further questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, public hearing's closed. And we'll move on to the next item. Oh, you want to do deliberations right now?
Yes.
I was going to just hold off for a minute here, let you all think.
Talk about it.
Okay, who's my counselor here? Cook? No? Awesome.
I will move staff recommendation.
Second.
Second by Cook?
No, it was McCoid.
McCoid, okay. Somebody put up their hand, okay. Counselor, you want to speak to it?
I've talked to the neighborhood before and heard their complaints as well, and I understand what they're getting at, and that the traffic and the school mentioning they're going to be over capacity and all of that makes sense. I think what we just talked about with the city manager earlier tonight about looking at the density of multifamily housing in different areas, and I think that's what the strategic plan speaks to more, is making sure that it's spread across the city instead of being located in one area. So I think that's an important strategic goal for the city, but as far as this particular project, I don't have that same concern as far as that. So I'm just in support of it.
Okay. Thank you, Counselor. Anyone else? Counselor Nanke?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Having been the chair of a neighborhood association for many years beforehand as well, a lot of emotion comes in when developments go into neighborhoods, but that's not our job here. Our job here is to look at the criteria and see if the development proposal adheres to that, which this does in all respects from my reading. But again, I'd like to just remind neighbors, because a lot of these things are in code, and if you don't like them, talk to us before a development comes up onto the table. We go through our strategic plan, we look at our codes on a periodic basis as well. And yeah, there's going to be some developments that some people don't like. We're trying to balance between density. If they'd like to see all single family, and everybody like to see all single family, that actually takes a lot more space to assemble. So tough decisions, but again, our decision is based on criteria. So I will support the motion.
Councilor Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to speak to this, and really, when the neighbors spoke, I really appreciated that call to care about something bigger. I think that especially on council and volunteering, everyone here tonight testifying really being a part of that call to something bigger, whether it's the neighborhood or providing housing. It's really nice to come to that position when making the decision. And, you know, as density increases, just as Councilor Nanke pointed out, we need to make sure that code's in front of it. We need to make sure that we're anticipating these needs. In this case, what I'm hearing, to kind of backpack off what Councilor Kaiser was saying, it's not necessarily the development in general, it's the type of development, and it's the attitude behind it. We don't have any codes addressing attitudes or feelings and being sensitive to those things, but they're still important. And as the neighbors pointed out, they live with the decisions that we make, and a little bit of courtesy can go a long way. I have to say, I'm reminded, as people were testifying tonight, specifically Ms. Love, of the issues in her neighborhood. It reminded me of our friends on Coral, testifying not once, but twice. And so outside of this issue tonight, I would love to make sure from our code enforcement and from our other enforcement divisions that we can have help with compliance with the zombie homes, help with enforcement on issues affecting livability in their community, because it's important, and because there are other things we can do outside of this.
Thank you. Councilor Anderson.
Thank you. You know, as the former chair of a neighborhood group like Councilor Nanke, I wish the developers would have come to the neighborhood group first, and I'm sorry they didn't. But as expressed in Mr. Shipman's letter, we have to look at the code and what is written down there, and is this applicable? And it is. I'm going to support it for the legal issues that I've just talked about, but for really 3 other issues. The first one is we do need more multifamily dwellings here by our studies, and this is one way to get around it or get to it. Secondly, I think the conditions are appropriate. I think the Planning Commission did a good job here of looking at this and taking into account some of the concerns of the neighborhood. The third one is the transit site. I mean, we don't know where the bus is on the other side of Silverton Road, but there's clearly transit, mass transit facilities right there that are going to be able to take people into town and out of town, and I think that's very important. And I think all 3 of those, multifamily, the conditions, the transit, are good in this area that is relatively close in, as opposed to someplace way out south or way out west or way out northeast. So this is where we ought to encourage this type of development, and so I will support it.
Thank you. Councilor McCoid.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, this is, of all the things, I've been in this my 3rd year on the council. These hearings are the hardest. Yeah. These are the hardest things we deal with, because we know what our oath is, and we got to look forward and enforce the ordinances and do those things. But when the neighbors come in and they're as passionate as these folks were tonight, and as articulate and as involved in their community as they are, it makes it really hard. It makes it hard to make these decisions. So I applaud the fact, Patty, you did a great job. And I would also say, you know, I had one in my ward about 1.5 years ago. It was the same exact arguments. They didn't want 3. It was near the school. It was crowding. It was all the same arguments and the same issues, and I get it. That was approved. There was one in Councilor Cook's ward right before you took office, the same exact issue. You know, we approved that, and it's being built right now. And so it's not, you know, these are being spread out. It's not like they're in one area of town. They are being spread out and developed all over town. We do have a shortage, and frankly, they meet the code and they meet all the requirements. I'll support it, but I understand sort of the angst that this creates in the various neighborhoods. But it is what it is.
Councilor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to say a few things about this. I've had many thoughts on this. I have a relationship with this neighborhood that goes back many decades. I had a cousin who lived on Carlton, and I spent weekends and summers in that neighborhood. And so I know this neighborhood, and I've watched it change over the years. For over 40 years, I've been associated with this neighborhood, so I'm very familiar with it, very familiar with the issues. I would like to dispute the notion that apartments are associated with higher crime rates. I just don't think that that's, I understand that that could be a perception, but I don't think that there's evidence to support that. And so I would like to dispute that, or dispute that somehow people of lower income are more susceptible to committing higher crime rate. I just have to go on record as saying I don't think that that's accurate. I do really appreciate all of the folks who came down and testified tonight, and I think that a lot of the feelings and a lot of the issues could have been alleviated had the developer chosen to go to the neighborhood associations. And this is, I'm saying this in this case, but I'm also saying it for developers in future cases. Go talk to people. Make sure that they're heard. You might still go forward with your development, but if people can be heard on these kinds of issues, it can help a lot. And if they think that they have meaningful input on how something is established or how you can move forward with something, I think that can alleviate a lot, and it can help with a lot of feelings, because people can feel like there's a partnership rather than something that's being imposed upon them. And I think we heard a lot of that tonight, and I'm sorry that it turned out that way. I agree with my colleagues who said that our job here is to look at the rules, and I think that it's clear that this development complies with the rules. I don't think that there's any dispute about that, and I wish that it had been done differently, however, but I will be supporting it.
Councilor Lewis.
I'm also going to support the motion. You know, as somebody who lived in a home in West Salem for 12 years, looking out on an empty field, it wasn't too much of a surprise when over 100 units, 3 stories tall, appeared in my picture window. The only thing I never thought of was to build an 8-foot wall and have that be the border between those apartments and the residential units. It kind of goes in the face of neighborhoods to build a wall here and then have it be bordered by Silverton Road. That, to me, is not the most welcoming thing we can do for new residents. And I recognize the change that's going to happen to the neighborhood, but I would rather have had us receive it with more genuineness than to do it this way.
Councilor Kaiser.
Thank you. I share a lot of the sentiment of my fellow councilors here, and I think this again presses the need for anytime there's a development happening that the developer needs to recognize the importance of the neighborhood associations, and that people will react strongly to these types of things. So whether it's a requirement or not, it's just a good idea to do that. And I hope future developers who may be hearing this, you know, please heed that. It's important to talk with your future neighbors about what will be happening. And it's actually something I hope as a council we can tackle and make a requirement, because I think it should be a requirement. If you have a developer, that you have to talk with your neighborhood association, and you make a point of doing that. The second thing that a lot of you have spoken to is, if you live in the city, it's going to change. I live just north of downtown. I know one day my neighborhood's not going to be single-family homes. It's going to be something else, because that's just the nature of cities. Over half of my neighbors are renters, and they're not bad people. And that correlation does not exist. I don't believe that, and I think it's an unfair characterization to say that just because you live in an apartment that you have a higher propensity to commit crimes. I just don't think that's a fair assessment. And I hope as this development proceeds that the neighbors living there now will hopefully go out to meet those people and welcome them into the neighborhood more so than they kind of shown that tonight.
Really briefly, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
I was struck when the advocate for the developer talked about doing outreach in the development on Battle Creek, how that was a part of it, and the neighbors wanted that fence. And I kind of thought, oh, well, how did they know to do that? How did they get a hold of this group when they didn't? And that really raised the question of equity with me, in addition to the questions about access. And we keep talking about the left turn lane, and we have the crosswalks, but you know, it was nice to see the pedestrian path with the playground being fenced off. These are important steps that we're taking, but they're not enough. They're baby steps, and we need to do more, because if the residents are talking about, you know, planned communities, zoned communities, where we can find ways to not have parking be the #1 code in violation, because maybe you don't need a car. I mean, just because you don't have the parking access doesn't mean that you don't need the car. You actually have to have a community that you can get around and function in without a car in order to be able to do that. So, as I mentioned before, we just need to make sure that we're getting in front of these things, which I know we're starting to do. And I was struck how they have asked other neighborhoods for approval before with the wall, just not in this case.
Okay, great. All right. Oh, Councilor Nanki.
Just 2 quick points. One being the attendance at neighborhood associations for development that came out of the neighborhood task force that former Ward 5 City Councilor Kate Tarter and I co-chaired. Right. And that was a wonderful group. Again, you can't mandate the developer to go to a neighborhood association, but we put as much emphasis as possible for that to happen. And usually when that doesn't happen is when we see appeals and people come down here as well. Second piece with the wall, and that was when it switched from single-family residential to commercial retail. And there's a lot of people in my ward that would love an 8-foot wall because they have compactors and semi-trucks right on the other side of that wall, which would go a long way to reducing noise. So there's a balancing act there. As this development went in, they could have possibly petitioned to have that 8-foot wall removed from the requirements, but yeah, we need to make sure that we have those pieces in place for noise abatement when appropriate.
Right. Well, thank you. As a very good discussion, I want to just personally underscore the notion that the smartest thing a developer can do is go talk to their neighborhood group first. Having served on the committee that Councilor Nanki mentioned, and having been through this now for 11 odd years, and also representing the Lansing neighborhood when I was on the city council for about 4 years, I can tell you that when Patty Tipton says it would have gone a long way and it was disrespectful not to, she meant it, for them to come in and talk to them. I think it would have helped. I don't know it would have solved all the problems, but it certainly would have allowed for people to feel more respected. So anyway, let's have a vote. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Okay. Next one. No? We're not going to do that? Okay, Councilor Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to find my agenda. There it is. Thank you. All right. And item 4B, I'd like to move staff recommendation.
Second by Anderson. We've had a public hearing on this. Would you like to discuss this at all?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So part of the reason that, and I'm going to misuse the word again, part of the reason I wanted to draw council's attention to this is for the same reasons that neighbors were here tonight. We are having a lot of development and infill slated right now, and especially when neighborhoods associations may not have the capacity to absorb all the feedback, it's helpful to pull these forward and really see what's the intention behind them, what are we looking at. And in this specific case, we heard the report last week about this with increased traffic. We heard the report with speed. It was very interesting too because we all agreed, well, the speed needs to be changed. And we heard a report, well, you can't change the speed limit arbitrarily and expect it to be enforced. And then we moved to do just that on River Road. But I wanted to give anyone who was interested in this property development a chance to come forward and speak about it tonight, which is why I called it up. Thank you.
All right. Yes, Councilor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did read the staff report prior to your meeting that I was absent from, and then did watch the public hearing, so I plan on voting on this item.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion passes. Okay, we will go to special orders of business. And I'm going to take just a moment to acknowledge our fire department. I met last week with the Consul General, Mr. Hernando Torres Fernandez, traveling from the Peruvian consulate in San Francisco to visit with me and describe a trip he made down to Salamanca in Peru and equipment that was donated by the Salem Fire Department. And they gave us an acknowledgement to the citizens of Salem I just wanted to share with you. All of us at the Salamanca 127 Volunteer Fire Brigade have been overwhelmed by your generosity and altruism. The new protection equipment you have so selflessly donated to our department will ensure the safety of men and women who risk their lives every day for our community. We remain forever grateful. And this is from Brigade Lieutenant Jose Luis Azmat, First Supervisor of Salamanca, and Lieutenant Carlos Robles Roman, Second Supervisor, and everybody on the Salamanca 127 Fire Company in Salamanca. So, and I want to have Gabe Ben-Musa, our Deputy Fire Chief, talk to us just for a second about what was donated. Yeah, come on up. Come on down. If you could tell us what you gave them and sort of the story.
Gabriel Ben-Musa, Deputy Fire Chief for the City of Salem Fire Department. The equipment was actually obsolete. It involves protective equipment gear, turnout gear that's kind of past its time. It's about 15 years due. It's been exchanged. It's been in our sort of like surplus. The other part is the self-contained breathing apparatus, which is about the same, about 15 years old. Doesn't meet any U.S. standards, so we couldn't even donate it here in the U.S. to any of the local fire departments. We always try to reach out to our local volunteers, some of the smaller districts to help out. In this case, we weren't able to do so because of just the equipment is so old. With Peru, they've reached out to us. They asked if we had something that we could help with, and that was the best we can do. Actually, City of Seattle Fire Department is donating some equipment, so we're going to combine our equipment with theirs, and they're going to ship it. So they're in charge of all the shipping. We provided training. We had one of the officers from the Peruvian Fire Service came in about a day later after the Consul General visited, and we provided some training on how to use the equipment, so he'll go back and in turn train the firefighters. So.
Understand, these firefighters, volunteers in this actually fairly large city.
So it's interesting that the Peruvian Fire Service, even City of Lima, has about 4 million people.
10 million.
10 million, yes, 10 million people, and it's provided by volunteers. They do not have any career sort of firefighters except for some of the administration.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing that was striking is that they respond to, given the nature of their building codes and things, and a variety of other issues, including being in a really active earthquake zone, they respond to a lot of issues. And this fire department didn't have these breathing apparatus to go into buildings. So in many cases, they had to kind of stand back and wait for the smoke to clear. So this was extremely important to them to have this kind of contribution. And while it may not immediately meet our code, it does meet a life service demand and need in these communities. So hopefully, I know the Consul General told me that he hoped we could stay as actively involved as we were in this, and they'll keep taking the equipment if we'll keep sending it down. Yeah. So it was really, I hope next time he's here, I'll try to set it up where he's here for a council meeting so you can meet the Consul General. He's really very, very nice man. So thank you, and thank you to the fire department, to Chief Niblock.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilor McCoid.
I move that the City Council authorize a grant of up to $12,500 to provide startup funding to the community group participating in the 100-day challenge to address youth homelessness in Salem, and direct staff to prepare a transfer resolution for the use of general fund contingencies to fund the grant.
Second.
Second by Nick. Yeah. He was moving fast today.
So, you heard from Tricia Ratliff earlier, and I was really glad. I filled in for the mayor on the meeting called the so-called leaders that met to discuss this 100-day challenge for the mayor, along with Deputy Chief Miller. And we worked in a group and had Tricia at the table. And some of the foundings there were really amazing. And it was really a group of folks that work from social agencies around the area that deal with youth hopelessness. And the challenge of that leadership group was to come up with a challenge that we could attack with this plan. And after 3-4 hours of discussion, basically it was to come up with a homeless shelter for youth 12 to 17, which is unserved. And you see the numbers here in the handout of the number of youth that are homeless during the year on a given day. And I was surprised, shocked actually, that we had 12 to 17-year-olds on the street with nowhere to go, no shelter, nowhere to turn to, out on the street, coming to Tricia's place of business, and she could come there during the day when it opened at 10 or 12 or whenever it was, but couldn't stay there for the night. Slept on the porch, waiting for it to open the next day. Nowhere safe to go. That's not something, and given the fact that we're focused on homeless in the strategic plan, thought this was something that we should get involved in. So as it went, you heard the basic social agencies basically volunteer to one of their employees to work in the actual group that implements the 100-day plan and moves it forward. As you heard, that 100 days starts counting here, I think Wednesday, they said. We looked at what we could do. One of the questions was, okay, do you need some money? Yeah, we need $10,000 to $15,000 to fund the activities of that group. And so one of my favorite stories in the Bible is Solomon cutting it half. So Chip and I looked at that and we made it 12.5. That's the reason for that number. And so I really think, I will tell you.
That's weird wording, yeah. How many
you get that? Halfway between 10 and 15, Chris. That would be.
There you go.
Okay.
So, but I would say,
this
I was very impressed with this. It's a unique challenge, and they've had success throughout the country. As they said, there was 13 different places that have had these grants, much bigger places than Salem, Oregon. But in all those cases, they met their number. And some of these challenges were high. They were really stretching a little bit. In every case, in the 13 places, they've made the number and beat it in most cases. So I think it's a unique way of attacking a problem, this is the way we can support it and be involved in it. So that's the reason for the motion.
Very good.
And I urge your support.
Councilor Nake.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I know that we've had folks come in and talk about this before, and it's challenging when you have underage children and what your options actually are to not be breaking some law by taking in runaways as well. So we need to fix it in a legal way, or at least find other options than people just caring enough to say, hey, you can bunk out on my couch, which may actually put them into legal jeopardy. So
very good. Okay, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion passes. Councilor Lewis, let's get these elected people out of here.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On agenda item 3.2A, I move staff recommendation.
Second by McCoy.
Real quickly, if I could, I want to thank Director O'Day, Mayor Clark, and Commissioner Carlson for coming down tonight. I really want to appreciate the efforts of Mayor Clark and Commissioner Carlson for, over the last year, putting their efforts into this issue of homelessness. And I view tonight's step as the first action step, as opposed to studying more. We are now at a point where we're going to do something. And I appreciate their support and their time.
Well, thank you, Councilor Lewis. Anyone else? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. And we have an information report. Anyone want to, any information? No. And we have a second reading.
Ordinance Bill number 2417, an ordinance declaring certain territory located at 4932 Swegle Road Northeast, annexed to the City of Salem, prescribing zoning and withdrawing the territory from the Marion County Fire District Number 1 and the East Salem Sewer and Drainage District. Councilor Anderson.
Yes.
Councilor Nanke.
Aye.
Councilor McCoid.
Yes.
Councilor Ossett.
Yes.
Councilor Hoy.
Aye.
Councilor Cook.
Yes.
Councilor Lewis.
Aye.
Councilor Kaiser. Aye. And Mayor Bennett.
Aye. Motion passes. Okay. Anyone else? Anyone left? Chief, did you want to address the council here for any reason? Kind of eating up your evening here. Figure you deserve a chance to talk to us. Okay. Then we are adjourned.